Did Jessica Simpson's husband finally realize she doesn't know what tuna is? Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. Today I want to talk about Jessica Simpson and her recent separation and likely divorce of her current husband, Eric Johnson. I'm going to analyze their relationship because it's been a buzz in the news. Before I get into this, I have a few disclaimers that I want to talk about. First of all, I want to say I am a huge Jessica Simpson fan. So while I am going to be very critical of her in this video because analyzing celebrity relationships is what I do, and I'll get into the disclaimers around that in a minute, but I'm a big fan of Jessica Simpson. I have always loved Jessica Simpson. The positives and the negatives. I've been a fan of hers since she first started making music, and like this shawl actually, if any of you remember the Newlyweds, Jessica wore a yellow version of this on the show, and I bought this pink one at the time. I've had it ever since then because she had it. I used to watch the Newlyweds obsessively. For those of you youngins, the Newlyweds was a reality TV series. It was one of the original like reality TV series to really hit it big. It was actually about the first couple years of Jessica Simpson and Nick Lachey of 98 Degrees' marriage. And yeah, I was obsessed with that show. I wanted to wear everything that Jessica wore. People used to tell me I look like Jessica Simpson, which is so not true, but like I think back then everybody thought that all blondes looked the same. So I tried to emulate her look. I bought this shawl because of her, and way too much Juicy Couture at the time. Only because I was working at a retail store at the time that like sold Juicy Couture, because it was very expensive back in the day. I think it's cheaper now, but it was a very expensive brand, and I was working at a retail store where I got an employee discount, which is the only reason why I could afford some of the designer things that I was, you know, trying to buy to emulate Jessica Simpson. I've always loved Jessica's style. I have a bunch of shoes from like her original shoe collection that I still have and love because they're such great quality. I used to love her Dessert Beauty, which I talked about in my fragrance history video that I have on here. So I've always been a fan of Jessica Simpson and her products. I give her a ton of credit because I feel like for a celebrity, she obviously has associated herself with really quality companies. So when she releases a product under her name, I feel like they're usually really quality products for the price point, which not a lot of celebrities do. A lot of celebrities will slap their name on anything and they don't get the quality. So, you know, I will give Jessica all the credit in the world. I think as far as business goes, I don't think she's necessarily a business genius, but I think she has been smart enough to align herself with people that have made really smart business moves so she could create a quality product at a reasonable price range. So I will give Jessica all the credit in the world for that. And I love her. I love her personality. I think she just seems like such a sweet person who gets very unfairly treated in the media. So I'm not making this video to like pile on with the insults about Jessica, but I am going to be analyzing her and picking her apart a little bit. So it's probably gonna feel a little bit like I'm attacking her, but I'm not intending to, because honestly, I love Jessica and I do feel like she gets disproportionately attacked in the media. I think because she's just a nice person and people know she's not going to fight back, which is a shame, and I'm going to get into a little bit of the media attacks and things like that. But before I get into this, I do want to talk about my usual disclaimers. I don't know anybody that I'm talking about in this video personally, so I'm only analyzing celebrities in all my videos based on their public persona and the information that we have available to us in the public. In reality, this isn't even about the celebrities. This is about the lessons we can learn from these celebrities and the information we have about them publicly, and the lessons we can learn to take into our own lives so that we can have happier, healthier lives and relationships. So honestly, like, the celebrity talk is really just a way of using some examples of, you know, jumping off points so that, you know, we can talk about some of these life lessons that I hope you guys can impart into your own lives. So it's really not about attacking the celebrities or Jessica or anybody like that. It's really just about, you know, just learning some life lessons from the stuff that is sort of out there in the media. I will say in this instance, I am going to talk and make a lot of references to Jessica's book, which is called Open Book. As far as celebrity like autobiographies, this is a good one. I gotta say, if you are at all a fan of Jessica Simpson in any way, I actually do recommend this book. I have not read a ton of celebrity autobiographies, but I've read a fair amount. I know in the last video that I posted, I talked about reading Melania's book, which for me was a bit of a disappointment because I didn't really feel like I got any more information or anything really like about her and how she felt and what she was going through or anything. Like, it felt very guarded, which is fine. Like, I respect people that want to keep their privacy, but it did feel weird for her to write a book and still be so guarded. With Jessica, she really is an open book. She's just laying it all out on the line. She does take a lot of the blame for a lot of the things that have happened in her life, which I respect, but I also feel like she puts more blame on herself than I think maybe needs to be, which is a warning sign for me. I know there's a lot of people that are really pushing accountability, and you know, taking the accountability for your own actions and your own responsibility is a good thing, but too often, I think especially with women, we take on all of the responsibility, we take on all of the blame, we blame ourselves for things, and we don't actually look at the actions of other people, and we just blame ourselves. And I think unfortunately in this current society that we're in, where we're constantly pushing accountability, I think too many people, especially women, are taking on all the blame of everything in the world on ourselves and making ourselves responsible for everything and not holding other people accountable for their actions. And I think it's a really common thing with women that kind of makes us feel like we're like a doormat or like we're a punching bag. And Jessica really has been more of kind of a doormat punching bag for a lot of her career. It's one of those things where, like, I get it, like having reflection and owning the part that you played in your life is important. It absolutely is. But if you start taking on the responsibility of everything and you never look at like, okay, but that person was wrong, you don't necessarily know where to draw boundaries with people, and you don't necessarily know like how to select who you should let in your life and who you shouldn't, because you just keep thinking that it's you and it's not them. In some cases it's them, and you need to take action to remove them from your life. So yeah, this is a really great book, and I'm gonna dive into this. So some of the stuff I'm talking about is I'm analyzing it based on Jessica's actual words. You know, I read this book when it first came out several years ago, and I think I focused at the time so much more on her relationship with Nick because I, you know, had watched them on the Newlyweds, so I had been so invested in their relationship. And then also her relationship with John Mayer, which I didn't really know as much about. And that was a very toxic relationship, which I'm not going to get into too much in this video, but I really related to a lot of the stuff she was dealing with John Mayer, because it was a lot of patterns that I'd experienced before in my life. So I feel like that when I first read this book, it was those relationships that I really kind of focused on more. I wasn't really necessarily as focused on the chapters. Like, I read the whole book, but I wasn't as focused on the chapters of Jessica and how she met her current husband Eric and their relationship. So when I heard recently that Jessica and her husband were getting a divorce, I had this nagging memory that when I had read her book, there were things about the way she talked about their relationship that I remember thinking back on as like, ooh, that's a red flag. But like, I, at the time, was just like, well, you know, she's happy, she's married, she seems like everything's fine, so like, I'll let it go. But I couldn't really remember what it was because it just wasn't in the forefront of my mind. When she announced that she was splitting from her husband, they had been separated for a while, apparently they're headed for divorce, I decided to go back and reread the book. And when I got to the chapters about like, especially the chapter about how she met Eric, I was like, oh yeah, a lot of red flags in this relationship, literally from the very beginning. So I decided I wanted to kind of go through that a little bit and talk about some of the things in here, because I think there's a lot of lessons. Again, this is not intended to like pile on to Jessica or like try to tear her down or make her look bad. It's just that I think there's a lot of mistakes. Like, a lot of the mistakes that Jessica makes in this book are so common. Like, they're so relatable. I think that's one of the reasons why I've always liked Jessica and why I think she resonates with a lot of people, is because she makes a lot of mistakes that a lot of us have made that are very relatable. So that's kind of why I want to get into this. I do want to touch a little bit before I get in. I'm not going to go into her relationship with Nick too much, or her relationship with John Mayer, or even her relationship with Tony Romo, but I will say that there is a serious theme in Jessica's past relationships that she doesn't like to be alone. And she kind of alludes to that in the book. She kind of needs to be with someone. She doesn't like to be alone. She does have a history of sexual trauma, and she claims she's going to therapy. I hope that that's really helping her. I really do, because it does seem like at a very young age that was not addressed. I'm sure that's a factor, and I'm not going to get into that too much because, you know, I'm not a psychologist, and I don't really want to start digging up her, like, really heavy trauma. So that's not what this video is about. But the fact that some of her trauma happened like at nighttime while she was trying to sleep, and that she has not been able to sleep, that's a common theme. She has a hard time sleeping. She has a hard time sleeping alone. Like, those things are all, they're pretty textbook. It's very understandable what she's dealing with. I do want to touch on, because when it comes to Jessica Simpson, one of the things that I relate to her the most about is body image. And I have a lot of videos on here talking about body image and beauty standards and things like that. I just feel like I can't talk about Jessica Simpson without bringing up the body image stuff. You know, as someone who has always been very full busted, I mean, in her case, she was overly sexualized by like the men in her church at a very young age, and like was told her body was wrong simply for its shape that she naturally was in puberty. And she talked about like dressing like just like the other girls, but because she was bustier, she was automatically like labeled as like that she was too sexual or she was too sexualized or something like that. I didn't have that at a young age because I was always overweight, but I mean, I'm a lot bustier than she was even, but I think as a young girl, being so overweight, I didn't necessarily get sexualized as much as a young girl, because when you're overweight, that kind of negates the sex appeal in some people's minds. I got that as like, I'd say like an older teen and in my early 20s, of like, I would dress like everybody else, but like I was labeled as being like looking too slutty or something, just simply because of my chest size, which is what it is. I mean, there's not much I can do about it. This is literally how I was made. So I also do think that that really did set up, I think for Jessica and probably also for myself, of just automatically believing there's something wrong with your body. And I do know, I do get a lot of girls that will comment on my videos and talk about how, you know, they were criticized, they were shamed because they were flat chested or because they were too skinny. And I don't want to take away anybody's experience, because body shaming in any form should not be acceptable. But when you are very naturally busty, there's a whole other level of stuff that you have to deal with, because for one, you can't buy clothes. You literally cannot just shop at regular stores. I have to special order my bras even now that are a lot more expensive than regular bras. So like, it literally is like an income problem. Anyone who wants to come to me and be like, well, if you just lost weight, nope. I've gotten as skinny as I possibly could like safely be, and I still have to do that because that's just how my body is built. It's ironic. This has been my experience, and not just my own personal experience, but observations I've made of other women that I know who are very busty. Guys don't want to date you. I think there's a lot of women who think, oh, if I was just bustier, or if I had a fuller bust, or if I had bigger boobs, like guys would want to date me. First of all, like to me, like you don't have a chest unless you're an F cup or over, like in my mind. Like, I'm not trying to criticize, but like anything smaller than an F cup is like nothing for me. Like my training bra was a D. When I get girls that are like, I'm a D cup, I'm so busty, I'm like, take several seats. I don't want to hear it. It's like when you have like permanent shoulder dents and like a back hump from like trying to keep your self up, then you can come talk to me. I find that most of the girls that I know from like the fuller busted community, because I did used to promote fuller busted bra brands, so I did meet a lot of other girls from that community, and I feel like it's a common thing where men will lust after you and they will sexualize you and they will try to like get your attention, or they'll leer at you or something, but they don't approach you as much. And they definitely don't want to like date you. I think there's a lot of reasons for that, and I'm not going to dive into that in this video. And for anybody out there who wants to be like, oh, you're complaining about your boobs being too big, it must be a nice problem to have. Having a bust line is like the beauty standard up to a certain size. And then once you get over a certain size, it's way worse than being flat chested. Because when you're flat chested, you can still buy clothes, you can still stand upright, you can still like do jumping jacks and not like give yourself black eyes. Like with anything else with women and bodies, there's a small window of like an acceptable size, and then anything like bigger or smaller is considered unacceptable. Usually bigger. Smaller can sometimes be acceptable because models don't actually have bust lines, so that's a whole other conversation. Let's be real. Jessica's body has been scrutinized possibly more than any other female celebrity. I'd say like Britney's probably up there. There's a lot of other female celebrities that get massively scrutinized, but Jessica has gotten a disproportionate amount of body scrutiny, especially for somebody whose body has never looked bad, right? I mean, like, she's been bigger or she's been smaller, but, you know, I mean, Jessica has never been somebody, like, I mean, when she was pregnant, she did gain a lot of weight, but she was pregnant. Like, Jessica's never been somebody that you look at and you just thought like, oh my God, this woman is like morbidly obese. But she has gotten a disproportionate amount of body scrutiny. And she does reference in the book the sort of epic, if you were around at the time period, the sort of epic mom jeans drama where she had a bunch of unflattering photos that someone took of her performing in these very high-waisted jeans with like a leopard belt. And I will admit, I don't think that that look was the most flattering on her. It was a trend at the time though, so you know, it's not like it was something that people weren't wearing. I didn't really think that look was ever really totally flattering on anybody, but like that was just kind of the look at the time. But like she said, the jeans were a size 4 and people were talking about how much she had ballooned out, how big she was, you know. I mean, it was just, the scrutiny that she got was just rampant. And I'm sure that it being Jessica's face and Jessica's body that was the one being scrutinized, I'm sure it was incredibly painful for her. But I think we all have to take a moment and realize that that scrutiny, and I would also say like when Britney's body didn't look the same after she had her kids, there's been a lot of other women, like especially around the early 2000s, that had absolutely normal women's bodies that were not even overweight, let alone obese, just got massively scrutinized. And I think that collectively we need to realize that the attacks on those women were attacks on all women. They were. When people said Jessica Simpson was fat in her high-waisted jeans, the media was telling all women, hey, you better not look like this. You better starve yourself to being skinny because this could be you. Like this is a cautionary tale. Make sure you starve yourself. Make sure you don't eat. Make sure you try to keep your weight down. Make sure you try to keep yourself small, or else you'll get the scrutiny. And anyone that wants to come to me and talk about it's about health, it's not about health. Jessica Simpson in her size 4 mom jeans was not unhealthy. I mean, she had some very unhealthy habits that we'll go into, but like that, a woman of that size is not at a weight that is hurting her health. You don't have to be a size 0 in order to be healthy. And in fact, the vast majority of women, unless you have a certain genetic makeup and you have a certain body structure and things like that, the vast majority of women are not healthy at a size 0. The vast majority of women, in order to get to a size 0, have to do some really dangerous and unhealthy things. And Jessica gets into that in this book, and I'm going to get into that. Jessica Simpson talks a lot in her book about like starting diet pills at a very young age, which diet pills are dangerous. And I mean, I know there's all kinds of different types of diet pills, but they're dangerous. Diet pills are dangerous. She talks about doing that. She talks about doing some really drastic diets to get her body into a certain size. She talks about the fact that on the Newlyweds, she was always like burping and farting, and she was like, you know, come on, I mean, look at the diet that I was eating. She was starving herself essentially to get her body into a certain acceptable body size, which is not health. That's not health, okay? When you're basically popping pills and starving yourself, that's not health. And when people start saying, oh, well, she has to get skinny because that's healthy, if you're torturing yourself and you're doing really dangerous things to your body, that's not health. Like, that's just a beauty standard that has nothing to do with your health, which is one of my issues with the fitness industry, is the fact that it focuses so much on image and look and doesn't actually focus on health, which is 2 different things. You can look healthy and be very unhealthy. You can look maybe not at the skinniest or not at the leanest or not at the fittest and still be very healthy. And she does talk about all the stuff that she's done to work on her body image. It breaks my heart because clearly as this book goes along, you're like rooting for her to have finally healed that body image and her body image issues, because I think as women we all want to feel like there's hope in healing that. And then it'll get to a certain point where it's like you realize that she really hasn't healed that, and it's just really heartbreaking to read in her book. She gets to a point where she starts getting plastic surgery, she starts getting tummy tucks after she's had her kids because of her drinking, and because she was taking a stimulant, which was another diet pill, and everything. With everything that she was doing, her doctors told her that her liver was not in a healthy place. It was actually very dangerous for her to have surgery, but also like her health was at risk. So again, she's trying to get herself skinny, but her health is at risk. She's doctors calling her, telling her her health is at risk. She tries to get the tummy tuck. She's not happy with it the first time, even though there's massive side effects. She ends up getting it done the second time. I'm sorry, and I've mentioned this in other videos, but I'm going to mention it again. This obsession with plastic surgeries to get yourself to fit a beauty standard, it's self-harm. It's self-harm and it's mutilation, and we call it the beauty standard. It is absolutely nothing to do with health. When you are putting yourself in a position to get these surgeries and you're putting your body at risk and doing these dangerous things, diet pills, plastic surgery things to reach a certain beauty standard, it's self-harm. It's a form of self-harm, and we're just calling it the beauty standard. You know, maybe it's prettier self-harm because you end up with a certain look, but it's self-harm. You're actually mutilating your body. I refuse to believe it's anything else. Like, it is absolutely body mutilation. As I was reading Jessica Simpson's book and she's talking about like her, you know, her botched tummy tuck surgeries and having to go through it a second time and everything, I'm like, she's literally harming herself. Like, this is literally self-harm. And it's just disguised as plastic surgery, which I think most plastic surgery is literally self-harm. Jessica Simpson, as of late, has been seen terrifyingly skinny. Could be for a lot of reasons. I hope she's well. I hope she's healthy. I'm gonna suspect she's probably doing Ozempic. I don't think it's ever been confirmed, and it may not be like actually Ozempic, but one of those types of diet shots and stuff. I feel very passionately about this and I have a lot of really strong opinions about this, but I'm going to try to keep it civil because I could really go off on this topic because it really does make me angry, but I'm going to try to keep it civil for this. Here's the thing. First of all, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not giving anyone medical advice, but I am someone who's been dieting since I was 8 years old. So I know a little bit about diet, nutrition, and weight loss and things like that. Here's the thing. If you have a severe medical condition, because not everybody who's obese has a severe medical condition, and I'm not saying that having excess weight or being obese cannot lead to certain medical conditions, but I was in the obesity weight range and got tested and I'm not diabetic. So not everybody who's obese is diabetic, right? But that said, if you are at a certain weight or a certain size and you are having side effects to your health that are putting your health at immediate risk, I understand the temptation to take medications in order to counteract that because like your life is in an immediate risk. I also understand because I have known people that were severely obese to the point where like literally they couldn't do anything. Like they got themselves in a situation where they couldn't really get up and walk really. So like you couldn't really get any physical activity. Their bodies were so used to a certain amount of food that like they just couldn't stop themselves. And you know, I mean, that's an extreme case. And yes, ideally you wouldn't get to that point, but like there are some people who have gotten to that point for various reasons. And if you're at that point where your weight has gotten so extreme, you can't get out of it, like you've dug the hole too deep and there's just no way to climb out of it, I understand going for medications. I honestly believe those are the only two instances that I would think that it's acceptable to take Ozempic. If you just have a few pounds to lose and you're willing to take a medication that could potentially have severe side effects, you know, I'm not a medical expert, but like read the fine print, these things have potential serious side effects, and you're willing to do that, you're willing to put your body at risk for things like cancer or stomach paralysis or things like that, solely to lose a few pounds that really are not affecting your health at all, they're just for cosmetic purposes. That's self-harm. I'm sorry, it is. That is self-harm. And it's dangerous. And again, I don't know if Jessica is taking these things to lose weight, but the fact that she's consistently throughout her book talked about taking diet pills, talking about, you know, oh, I should have learned to love my body by this point, but I didn't, so I had this very dangerous surgery in order to get my body back to this and things like that. Like the fact that she has consistently proven that she's willing to do things that are very dangerous for her body in order to fit a certain look or beauty standard lends itself to that she probably is doing that now or something like that now. I hope it's not because she has a severe medical illness. I don't know. I hope that it's not, but every indication does lead itself to the fact that she probably would take something, no matter how dangerous it was, just to lose weight, because that's just the mentality she's in. And I know she has gotten a disproportionate amount of criticism for her body, so I understand why she would get put in that position. I'm gonna say something that probably isn't popular. This is probably gonna be controversial, but I'm just gonna say it. And I'm sure I'm biased in the situation, but I actually believe that pretty overweight women get body shamed worse than anybody. I understand there's some women that wanna say they're skinny shamed or wanna say that they've been made fun of because they don't have shape and they don't have curves. And again, I don't wanna dismiss your experience, but skinny women have always been the beauty standard. So like maybe you've been made fun of because you weren't as curvy, because curvier bodies have been more the beauty standard, but it is nothing compared to what overweight women have to go through. Like nothing. There's no woman out there who is just skinny or flat chested or has a small butt or something that has gotten even a fraction of the criticism, because you can still see super skinny body images in the media. There always will be super skinny body images in the media. That will always be a beauty standard. Will there be other beauty standards of maybe having like, you know, more of the Kim Kardashian body? Yes. But skinny will always be the beauty standard. Like it always will be something, because there's always the modeling industry, and the skinnier you are in the modeling industry, the better. So you're always gonna see that skinny look in the media somewhere. It may not be like the top beauty standard, but it'll always be the beauty standard. So if you're a pretty girl and you're skinny, you're just one of the chosen ones. Like that's just, especially if you're naturally skinny and you don't have to put much effort in, I'm sorry, you're just one of God's chosen people, and there you go. Like enjoy your life. If you're like unattractive and super skinny, you are still skinny. So you can get called maybe an eccentric beauty. There's a lot of supermodels and I know I'm gonna sound like a hater when I say this, there's a lot of supermodels out there that are actually really ugly. They're just skinny. And they get called unconventional beauties, is what it is. Again, I know I'm sounding catty, but I'm very passionate about this. If you are overweight as a woman and are unattractive, you're probably gonna be overlooked. And I'm not saying that that doesn't come with pain. I'm sure it does, because just being overlooked and ignored can be a very painful thing if you just wish to be seen. So I'm not saying that that doesn't hurt, but you tend to be able to fly under the radar a little bit. Like, people are probably gonna pay less attention to you because you're unattractive and you're overweight. And again, I think all women are beautiful, and I think all women have the potential to be beautiful, and I don't think that there's one particular beauty standard, but I'm talking about like the way that our society tends to work, right? There are certain beauty standards for sure. But if you're an attractive woman and you're overweight, everybody sees you as a project they have to fix. And oftentimes the way they have to fix you is by shaming you. They all think that, well, if we just shame you into thinking that you're ugly, you'll lose weight and then you'll be one of the pretty skinny girls. Like, you should want to be one of the pretty skinny girls. I also think too that if you're a very attractive woman who happens to be overweight, there's a lot of guys who are very attracted to you, but they are ashamed that they're attracted to you because they've been programmed to believe they're only supposed to be attracted to the thin women. So if they're attracted to an overweight woman, they're ashamed of that and they decide they have to take out that anger on you. Like, how dare you be pretty enough for me to be attracted to you, but you're not skinny enough for me to like make it known that I'm attracted to you. So like, let's shame you. And I think that that's, I mean, I feel like that's what I've been dealing with my whole life, is like, I've been pretty enough so that people pay attention to me, but I'm not naturally skinny enough. I mean, I've been skinny, but I've spent most of my life struggling to be skinny and like fighting my natural body shape and my natural body tendencies in order to be skinny. You get so much more shame because you get the attention for being pretty, but then you get the body shame for being overweight. And it becomes this like perfect storm of like just negative attention and hate. It's exhausting. And I really do feel like that's what goes on with Jessica. Jessica even talked about early on in her career, people were calling her like the Cindy Crawford type, because Cindy Crawford at the time that Jessica was little was like the top supermodel. She was known for being a little bit more athletic than just like waif-like. The fact that Cindy Crawford in her heyday was considered a curvy model should give you an idea of what the 90s was really like for women. The fact that Cindy Crawford's body was like touted as being like the curvy version, and because like most of the models were just like, it was heroin chic. It was the time when girls were supposed to look like they had drug problems, and that was called health, right? Heroin chic was the name of the beauty standard in the 90s, and it was called health. I really do feel like Jessica Simpson, it's one of the things that I've related to her about, is that her downfall has been because she's such a pretty girl, but because she struggled with her weight and staying within a certain beauty standard. And again, Jessica Simpson's struggle with her weight has just been like not being a size 0. It's not her being overweight, it's her not being a size 0. And because she was a pretty girl, she got so much more scrutiny, because it's like, well, wait, you're pretty enough so that if you could just be skinny, you would be perfect. So like, don't you want to be perfect? And I think that that's where the pretty overweight girl gets so much more crap from society than any other group. You become their project. You become the thing that they need to fix. Like, if you could just fix that about yourself, then you could be like the pretty skinny girl. So if you just starve yourself, then you'll be pretty and skinny. Because if you're pretty and overweight, it's like, to society, it's like a waste of a pretty face or something like that. You know what I mean? I know I went on a rant. I probably just offended a whole bunch of people when I said that, but like, that's just, and I'm not saying that there aren't other groups of women that don't get crap, like, you know, and don't have pressures from society and don't have problems. I'm not saying that at all, but I do think that the pretty overweight girl gets more crap from society in general than most other groups. So yeah, Jessica has definitely, body image wise, had a disproportionate amount of attacks on her. And again, I do think she gets attacked more because she's the nice girl. She doesn't fight back. I also think Jessica really does kind of make herself a bit of a doormat. Jessica does have a pattern in relationships with Nick, with John Mayer, I think even with Tony Romo, maybe not to the extreme, probably also with her husband Eric, where she tends to, she's very wounded feminine in the fact that she really does put these guys up on a pedestal like they're going to be her savior. She idealizes these guys and so insecure within herself. And not to say that all these guys were that critical. I think Nick was critical. I think John Mayer was extremely critical. Didn't sound like in the book, the way she painted it, Tony Romo was specifically critical. He just kind of wasn't as willing to stand up for her. She doesn't make it sound like Eric is specifically critical of her, but that she's so critical of herself that it's very easy for her to get into relationships where she gets taken advantage of, or she gets controlled, or she gets manipulated. I get the impression her father was doing that a lot to her. It's hard to know like if her father was really doing that from a negative place. Her father's obviously got his issues, and she's got issues with her relationship with her father. And I'm not even going to dive into that here because I really want to get into the Eric stuff. But yeah, Jessica has a pattern of being very insecure, understandably so considering her background, but that's typically going to be a recipe to get into relationships with people that make you feel insecure, because they just confirm what you already feel about yourself. Okay, so I'm going to go through the chapter of her book. This is basically the chapter of her book where she first meets Eric, her husband, because I think there's some clues in here that, again, they've been married for 10 years, so I have no idea if these things that she's alluding to when they first meet are the reason for her breakup. I will also point out that I tried to do some research for this besides just reading her book. I found some information that were just sort of like tabloid things talking about speculation as to why Jessica and her husband were splitting. They were just speculation though, and I have not been able to find a lot of information about Jessica's husband and like what he's currently doing. I heard a little blurb about like that he had a wellness brand, but I couldn't find anything about it online. I remember hearing some buzz that he was starting a wellness podcast, couldn't find anything about it online. Couldn't really find that much about him. So I'm really gonna put the focus a little bit more on Jessica in this because she's what I have to go by. I can make some guesses and sort of fill in the blanks. Again, like I said, this isn't about them. This is really about the lessons that we can take away from this, but I really only have Jessica's point of view. So, you know, I'm gonna have to talk more about her in this situation. I'm sure he's no saint because none of us are, but I don't really have anything to go by when it comes to him and like his image, because he really has not been in the media. And I tried doing some research and I can't easily find any information about him or like kind of what he's currently doing. Okay, so Jessica talks about meeting Eric for the first time, and I guess, you know, he was a Yale football player. He's from Needham, Massachusetts. I used to live in Needham, Massachusetts. What? I had an apartment there for a while. The Yale football star. He ended up playing mostly for the 49ers. I think he also played for the Saints. He's apparently a great football player. His career ended. I know he was married when he played football. And I have a vague recollection that his ex-wife was just like briefly on some reality show or something, like a WAGs or one of those shows or something, where she made some comment about how difficult it is when a man retires from sports, which is very common. There's a big issue, and I think I touched on this a little bit in like my Tom Brady video, talking about him and Giselle, and also I think my video where I talked about Kylie and Jason Kelsey. Particularly for pro athletes, for any guy, retirement is a difficult time. Retirement for most men is usually a big shift in lifestyle, and it's usually a very difficult time for men for a lot of reasons. I'm not going to go into that here, but particularly for pro athletes, for one, they usually retire younger, so they have to go through kind of like a big career transition at a younger age than a lot of guys. So like they still feel like they have so much time left to do something, but they don't necessarily always know what they're gonna do. But Jessica met Eric kind of after that time period, so it's not that shocking. Divorce does often happen after, you know, big career changes or big career moves, even after retirement at any age really is actually a very common thing. Jessica sort of met him after he was going through that. It does feel like, and she doesn't say this specifically, but when she's kind of talking about him, she talks about how, you know, Eric he was very into yoga, he's very into holistic practices, even as an athlete and stuff, so that was kind of his thing, which I think is more and more common in sports. I feel like Tom Brady was really into that a lot and stuff like that. So the holistic like yoga practices and kind of that antithesis of the like the gym bro macho man was actually, it's more and more common now, but it's still not totally common in sports. But it does kind of feel like, again, in this book they're talking about, you know, Eric was going to see this healer or working on this, you know, going to this meditation teacher or taking this yoga training. Jessica doesn't say this, but the way she's presenting Eric in this book, it does kind of feel like when they first met, he was a little bit lost and trying to find himself, which is a tricky time to meet a guy, because guys are typically not going to be open to like true commitment until they've found their grounded passion and purpose. So that's usually a red flag. It's a good thing when guys are trying to find themselves and when guys are trying to find where they belong, like that exploration, absolutely a good thing. If he's actively working towards that, while he's still in that process, he's probably not going to be ready for a full commitment. Eric was also apparently accepted to the Wharton School of Business, which was very exclusive, very difficult to get into, and he was accepted into that program. And Jessica met him kind of before he was ready to go into that program. So he was obviously still kind of trying to figure out himself and his place in the world and where he was going to go with his life and stuff, and that's where they met. So Jessica also talks in her book about the fact that the gist of it was essentially one of her sister Ashley's friends was going to set Eric up with another friend, not Jessica, and that's kind of how they met, where she invited him over to Jessica's house because Jessica was kind of having a get-together, and she kind of brought him there to introduce him to somebody else. She wasn't there, and he ended up meeting Jessica instead, and they really hit it off. I do find it interesting, at one point Jessica talks about Eric actually meeting the friend that they were originally going to fix him up with. She says Lolo explained that Eric was originally meant for her. They thought that was hilarious. It certainly would never have worked out. They turned out to be soulmates in a different way and have become best friends. I'm sorry, but the idea of actually describing my husband and another woman that my friends originally were gonna set him up with like that would be insane. Like, that's actually insane. Like, I understand, I know there's a lot of debate about, like, can men and women be friends and stuff like that. I'm not even gonna get into that. I'm not saying that men and women can't be friends and that's impossible. But to describe your husband as like, oh, it never would have worked out with him and this other girl, but they turned out to be soulmates in a different way and have become best friends. That's weird. That's just weird to me, like, that you would describe your husband and another woman that way. When I read that, I was like, oh my god, crazy. And again, I'm not saying anything's going on. I have no idea. I don't know anything about the situation, but that description was strange. Okay, another red flag. Jessica was clearly leading their relationship from the beginning. She was obviously more famous, and, you know, she had a career. He was kind of changing careers and trying to find himself. Jessica is leading the relationship. If you read this chapter through, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, Jessica was clearly leading the relationship. He had gone to Jessica's house with some friends, so, like, he didn't have his car, and when his ride was going to leave, he made the comment about how he had to go, and Jessica was like, you should stay. They had just met, mind you. They're at her house, and she's asking him to stay and spend the night, and he makes the comment about, like, well, are you sure? Because, you know, my ride's about to leave, so, you know, you have to be sure. And she was like, yeah, I'm sure. So they just meet at her house, and then they spend the night together. So she's just met this guy, and granted, he came at her house because he was invited by a friend, so it's not that strange. But to invite him to spend the night right away, I get it, because sometimes when you really like someone, like, you don't want the night to end, and, like, you want to stay with them and everything, and, like, I totally get that feeling of, like, feeling attached and, like, not wanting them to go and stuff like that. Like, I get that. It's a bad idea. Jessica is obviously getting too clingy way too quickly. The fact that he, like, gets up in the morning because he has a Marianne Williamson seminar that he's going to. He gets up, doesn't say goodbye, leaves a note, and basically says he'll text her, and then waits a day to text her after they've just slept together. You know, and she's basically saying something about, like, oh, he left Jessica Simpson naked in bed to go see Marianne Williamson and stuff. It's like, she was so needy. She was basically like, I use the term pick-me girl in a loving way because I feel like so many of us have been there, so I'm not using this as an accusatory term. Like, I have my recovering pick-me girl guided journal. I've been a recovering pick-me girl. I'm not gonna say that I wouldn't have been like this at a certain point in my life, so I'm not saying this as a judgment, but, like, she clearly was so needy and clingy to him from the very beginning. It seems like she was really kind of going after him and chasing him. So she was really taking the lead in the relationship. Okay, she talks about a date that they went on. They went out to eat, and it was at Nobu that I found out Eric was vegan and almost did a spit take. Well, I'm changing that, I thought. I did for a time, but he went back to eating that way. This is like, I think this is maybe the first time they went out to dinner or something. Like, this is very early on, and she's already like, well, I'll change that about him. Again, she's leading the relationship. She's jumped into, she's chasing him, she's gonna control him, she's gonna conform him into what she wants. Again, I'm not saying that this was their dynamic throughout the whole relationship, but this is how it started. While she was kind of falling for him, she ended up planning a girls' trip to the Isle of Capri for her 30th birthday, but she decided to invite Eric along because you know, she was so in love. That's usually a red flag to me too. Like, I get it. Like, you want to spend your birthday with your man. Like, I understand that. But like, you're planning a girls trip as a big trip for your birthday, but you have this guy and like, you have to bring him along. So it's like, hey, let's bring all my girls, but like, let's also bring my man. It's not like a couples trip where people are bringing couples. I just always find that to be a little bit, it's a little bit of a red flag to me. It gives off a neediness vibe. It gives off kind of a controlling vibe. A little bit of like a, you know, I don't know if it's because she couldn't leave him alone or because it was like, I need him here. I know she's trying to make it sound like, oh, she's so comfortable. Like, she's not ditching her friends for her new relationship. She's happy with melding the two together. And, you know, again, it's your choice. And if everybody's okay with it, then that's fine. But I find it a little bit of a red flag here that she's again planning a girls trip, but now that she's got this boyfriend, the boyfriend has to be a part of it with her, which is like another like clingy kind of vibe to it. So it's on this trip, and I don't recall exactly how long they've been together at this point, but I don't think very long. Jessica talks in this book about being really into birthday wishes, blowing out the birthday candles and making a wish, and like that's a big deal for her. So she does that for her birthday. She normally doesn't tell her wishes at all. That's a big thing. And her and Eric are in the hotel room, and she basically tells him that she wants to kind of break her rule and tell him her birthday wish. She wished for a baby girl, and she wants to have it with him. This is feeling very, again, it's her 30th birthday. It's feeling very, my clock is ticking. They obviously have not decided to get married at this point, but she's already talking about like, let's have a baby together, which I'm always like, ooh. I'm very leery of that. I'm very leery of people who are so ready to make a commitment of making a child with someone. They haven't made the decision yet to actually make the commitment of marriage. And I know I've talked about this in other videos about like the crazy idea that people that think that marriage is a bigger commitment than having a kid with someone. I mean, I'm not going to dive into that, but the fact that they decide to start trying to have a family before they're even engaged. And I know a lot of people that do that. I know that's a common thing, but I really think it's a red flag. Now we get into one of the biggest red flags. Eric had basically been accepted to Wharton, which is a business school at UPenn. So we're talking Pennsylvania here. Jessica's in California, and it's a really big deal for him to get accepted. It's this business school. He's a Yale graduate. So, I mean, we're talking about like somebody who has an education, and he's gonna get more of an education. She basically talks him out of going. He's packing and getting ready to go, and she talks him out of going. Okay, which I'm like, the whole time I'm reading this, it's literally like a horror movie to me. Like, I just want to be like, Jessica, don't open that door. There's danger behind that door. And like, I just, oh my God, it was getting me so frustrated. She says this: when I came home, he said he was having second thoughts about business school. It was only then that I said my piece. I have a GED and my business just cleared 750 million. I said, we're closing in on $1 billion and trending up. A GED. You don't need to go to Wharton. You can hire someone who went to Wharton. And then it says he basically talked to a whole bunch of mentors and things like that. Eric confided in them that he knew he would marry me and we would raise kids together. If Wharton could jeopardize that future, it wasn't worth it. All right, he told me, I'm going to the Jessica Simpson Business School. And she says she was so relieved. Here's the thing. We're talking about Jessica Simpson, the celebrity. And again, like she's saying, she's got this business that's just about to clear $1 billion. He is going to be in Pennsylvania. He's not going overseas. Granted, it's on the other side of the country and she's in California. I gotta be honest with you, I really think they could have made it work. And he could have still gone to business school because that's what he wanted. I know he was having second thoughts, but I really do think that he was having second thoughts because she was pressuring him. She was so like clingy, she was controlling the relationship. And I'm not saying that he regrets it. I have no idea if he regrets it or if he doesn't. No clue. He ultimately made the decision and it had to be his decision. You know, she's not responsible for that. You know, she said her piece. She said what she thought. You know, like she said, he talked to other people. Honestly, the fact that he had to talk to other people like mentors and coaches and stuff leads me to believe that he was skeptical of that decision. Ultimately, he made the decision and it had to be his decision. So I'm not putting the decision on her. Jessica Simpson's not a business person. Yes, she just has a GED. I understand that. But like, Jessica Simpson has managed to align herself with some very good business people because she's a celebrity. Eric, while he was a pro athlete, was not like celebrity, you know? I mean, he had a little bit of a name to him, but he wasn't like at that level of celebrity where he could just associate himself with some good business people and then start his own business. He wasn't in Jessica's position. So like, yeah, Jessica Simpson could be Jessica Simpson with just a GED. And you know, you can be a business person without a degree and things like that. Like, I'm not saying Wharton is the hero end all be all or anything. The fact that he found this path, this vision, this everything, and then she's like basically trying to deter him from that path. He makes the joke about, I'll go to the Jessica Simpson School of Business. He's obviously now deflecting to like her being the one in charge. Like, she's the business person. She's the, you know, head of the household. He walked away from a plan that honestly, with their level of income, especially her level of income and celebrity and stuff, they could have made it work. They could have made a long distance thing work for a while. He wouldn't have to give up the Wharton School of Business in order to have a family with Jessica. But, and I have gotten some criticism about this before, but here's the thing. You can have whatever relationship dynamic you want to have. Your choice. However, in order to have masculine feminine polarity, you need one partner to be in the masculine and one partner to be in the feminine. Now we all have both energies, so we all can connect to both. But most men are going to be masculine at their core, so they're going to be their best selves in their masculine energy. And most women are going to be feminine at their core, and they're going to be their best selves in feminine energy. The masculine is going to prioritize passion and purpose first. The feminine is going to prioritize family, community, relationships, connection, that kind of stuff first. Not to say that a feminine woman can't have a passion and purpose. She can. She'll always prioritize family first. The masculine can absolutely prioritize family and loved ones, but his passion and purpose is always going to come first. And that's the dynamic that tends to work the best. Now, you can have a different dynamic if you want, but I know there's a lot of people, I see it out there all the time, where there's a lot of women that are trying to justify being the breadwinner by arguing that you can be in your feminine energy and being the breadwinner and this and that and whatever. And you know, that you can still be a masculine man and be a stay-at-home dad. You really can't, because it throws off the polarity. This isn't necessarily just about income, and because that's kind of a power dynamic and that's a separate thing. When you have a man who now puts family, community, relationships before his passion and purpose, and a woman is putting her passion and purpose first, resentment's gonna build. She's gonna feel that he's not in his masculine because he doesn't have the distinct passion and purpose. So he's not going to feel as stable, because a man who isn't in his masculine energy, who's in his feminine energy, is going to feel less stable. Not to say he shouldn't have a connection to his feminine energy, because a masculine man with no connection to feminine energy is going to feel really insensitive. So I'm not talking about him being a jerk, but like, if he's not prioritizing his masculine energy, so prioritizing passion and purpose, he's not going to feel like a stable guy. For a man, he can be with a woman that has a passion and purpose, but if he feels like she's putting her passion and purpose first, or her passion and purpose is stronger than his, her masculine energy is gonna feel stronger than his. He's gonna feel like his masculine is not strong enough for her masculine. Now, in an unhealthy relationship, he'll try to tear her down. In a healthy relationship, he'll either step up or he'll walk away and allow a more masculine man or somebody that has a stronger passion and purpose to step in. I know there's a lot of women nowadays that want to idealize being able to be the breadwinner and still be in your feminine energy. I've fallen for a lot of like feminine business scams that I've spent a lot of money on these like feminine business programs and stuff, like be in your feminine and make tons of money. Every single one has really come down to, okay, you can be in your feminine and make money, but like you still got to be primarily masculine. That's what they all come down to. And I've wasted a lot of money, unfortunately, falling for that, be in your feminine and run a business. I really don't believe it's possible. You need a significant amount of masculine energy in order to run a business, to be a success in, you know, financial success. A lot of people want to argue you can't, but you need the masculine energy. You do. And again, if you have more masculine energy than your male partner, you're not really going to be able to fully respect him, because let's be real. As women, we don't really respect stay-at-home dads. I have a lot of feelings about stay-at-home dads. I don't think they're a good idea. I understand it sometimes, that's just what has to happen, but I don't think it's a good idea. There might be people out there that might be the exception. I don't know, and you can have your choice and you can do what you want, but at the end of the day, as women, we really don't respect that, because we want our man to have a passion and purpose. And most men are not going to feel fulfilled if his passion and purpose is just being a stay-at-home dad. For most men, that's not gonna be the passion and purpose that they truly want. Not saying that that's an excuse for men to not be an involved husband and father. at all, because if you are a husband and you are a father, you should be an involved husband and father. But that alone for most men is not going to be fulfillment enough. And if it is for you, you're in feminine energy, which is fine if that's what you choose to do, but you're not really going to feel like as stable a partner. Jessica talks a lot in this book about feeling like Eric is grounded, you know, feeling like he's her safety and things like that. I'm finding it really hard to believe, and maybe it's because Jessica is in a situation where she can put her name on a brand and not necessarily have to show up every day and do the work. I'm not saying that she hasn't worked in her life, but you know, she has things set up for her, so she gets to kind of say like, okay, I'm not going to do this today, or I'm not going to work on this today, or whatever. Like, she's got more freedom because of her celebrity. So their situation may be a little bit different, but because she's obviously the clear breadwinner, it's gonna throw off the polarity. It just is. And I've had people try to argue with me that, and I've seen people online that try to push the agenda that women can be the breadwinners and still be in their feminine and things like that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's not common. It's very rare, and it's a lot more difficult than most people are really willing to put the work in. So a few other red flags in their relationship that I want to go over. Eric does propose, and he does seem to have a sentimental proposal. Like, he says he proposed at home because he knew that that's what Jessica would want. He proposes with a ruby ring, and you know, she's kind of like, you know, how did you know I wanted a ruby? And he's like, well, because I know you so well. But then you find out that like her mom helped him pick out the ring, which is fine, but it does feel a little bit like, oh, he knew you so well, but he also had your mom pick it out kind of thing. Whatever. I mean, that's not a major red flag. It's just sort of interesting. But then she ends up finding out that she's pregnant. They push back the wedding. She gets pregnant again. They push back the wedding, so they have 2 kids before they get married. I don't know. I get the impression that Jessica is hesitant to actually get married. It feels like she's constantly kind of pushing off the wedding and stuff. And some of that could be because she's already been married and her husband's already been married. So they both have failed marriages and things like that. Like, so, you know, it's understandable. When Jessica is about to have her first child, her daughter, she does find out her parents are splitting up. So I'm sure that that probably affected her feelings about marriage. She also talks about like not really wanting to do a big wedding because, you know, her and her husband have both had weddings. Understandable. Completely. Then she gets the opportunity where somebody wants to basically pay for her to have this big wedding to, you know, cover it for, you know, I forget, it was a magazine or something. So they decide to have a big wedding, but it's just for her friends. It's for her friends and family to have, you know, the wedding for her friends and family and stuff, which is fine, but it is also like kind of deflecting the idea that the wedding is actually for her and her husband. It's giving off a little bit like she's hesitant about getting married, which is understandable considering the circumstances. She also talks about how she, you know, she didn't drink at all while she was pregnant with her 2 kids. She ends up with 3, but when she had her first 2 kids, she didn't drink at all. But then after she had her kids and stuff, she started drinking to kind of like numb out what she was dealing with. She was working less, so she had more time to think. And, you know, that's not totally uncommon. She's going through a lot of really big life changes. You know, her body is changing because of pregnancy, and for somebody who's had her body be the subject of so much scrutiny. Also, you know, she's getting older in a business that glorifies youth. She's kind of switching careers where she's not really going out and singing as much. Her parents are getting a divorce. She's now a mom. She's, you know, now, you know, getting married and newly married and things like that. She's going through a lot. Like, I mean, so the fact that she's drinking to numb that out, not shocking. Not healthy, but not shocking. But Jessica clearly has a drinking problem and admits that and is dealing with that and everything. And she goes a lot into her addiction and stuff like that. I do find it interesting that her husband Eric, she talks about him being, you know, like this health nut and he's into the spiritual stuff, but they make it sound like he's drinking too. And that's not to say that you can't be a spiritual person and into holistic health and stuff and that you can't have a drink, but I do find that to be a little odd. Somebody that is, you know, would be drinking and stuff like that, but also be into the health and wellness space. It does happen, but it was a little surprising to me. I did hear something, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm just gonna mention it again. Don't know if it's true because it was just a little aside and I couldn't find any actual like confirmation of this, but I'm only gonna mention it because I do think it's an important lesson. I did hear that Eric had like some kind of a health and wellness business, but that Jessica was backing it. The fact that Jessica had kind of like obviously like took over his business, like talked him out of going to business school, then, you know, if he does have a business, it's not as successful as her business, but like she's funding it, but it's obviously not doing well because I can't even find it anywhere. That dynamic not going to work. As the woman in a relationship, never fund a man's business. Men have to figure these things out for themselves. You can be there for emotional support. You can definitely be motivating to him by being there and being an inspiration to him. Like, there's a lot of ways you can be there for a man while he's figuring things out. You can be there for a man while he's building and growing if that's what you choose to do, but do not financially back him. Don't give him free labor. Don't give him free help. Men need to figure these things out themselves. They need to do the work themselves, and they need to figure things out themselves. You can't get into that dynamic of helping him out financially. I don't care what your financial dynamic is. Do not do that. And also too, like, because I can't figure out like what Eric is actually doing right now, and maybe he is just a full-time dad or something like that, but when men are not actually actively living their passion and purpose, and if they're still in that limbo area, they're not going to be able to be fully committed to you. They're just not. Men need to find their passion and purpose in life, and they need to have that before they will be fully committed to you. They may even marry you, but they won't be fully committed to you because they haven't found their true purpose and their true reason for being here. It's not going to be their wife and kids. And I know for a lot of women, we want a man's passion and purpose in life to be his family. And that doesn't mean that his family shouldn't be an incredibly important part of his life, but it's not going to be his true passion and purpose. A man's true passion and purpose is something greater than himself. It's greater than his family. It's something that he is like here to be and here to do. And he's not going to be able to fully show up as the man that, you know, his family needs him to be until he finds that passion and purpose. Again, maybe Eric's found that. I don't know. But I haven't been able to find any information about that. So it's leading me to believe that he may not have actually found that, which is going to be a strain on their relationship, especially where Jessica has so much going on in her life, and she has, you know, her businesses, she's had her career, like she's had, you know, things like music and stuff that have been such a passion of hers. If a woman's passion and purpose is greater than a man's, it's always going to throw off the polarity. It's always going to throw things off because she's always going to feel more like the masculine partner than he is. And it's always going to cause problems. Jessica's also talked about getting sober. I hope she still is. I've heard rumors, and again, these are just rumors, so I don't know how true they are, but I did want to bring this up because it is probably something a lot of people are going through. I've talked about in other videos, you cannot be in a relationship with an addict because the addict will always put their addiction first. Their highest devotion will always be to their addiction. They can't truly be committed to you because they're committed to their addiction. So when somebody is an addict and they're in an active addiction, they cannot truly be in a committed relationship. Once someone gets sober, they typically can be capable of being in a committed relationship, but they may not be the same person. There's a lot that people have to go through in order to get sober. So if you are in a relationship with somebody who's an addict and they do get sober, you're gonna have to start from scratch. Like you're gonna have to, it's a new relationship. It's a new dynamic, and you are gonna have to decide if you want to continue in this relationship and how this relationship is going to work, because it's really going to be a new relationship. You're in a relationship with a new person when they get sober. And so I'm not saying that relationships can't work when one person is an addict and then they get sober if you do choose to stay in a relationship, but you have to, it's a new relationship because you're in a relationship with a new person because they haven't really truly been themselves while they were an addict. They've been under the influence. Once somebody gets sober, you kind of have to get to know each other again. Like you have to, like, if you are going to stay together, you kind of have to start getting to know each other and kind of start from scratch to a certain extent if you are going to stay together in a relationship. And some relationships can handle that and some relationships can't. I have no idea if that's what's going on with Jessica and Eric, but the fact that she is going through sobriety, it's not totally shocking that she would now potentially be going through a separation and divorce, because people usually do have to reconnect with each other and actually kind of rediscover a relationship when one person gets sober. Jessica has alluded to the fact that Eric got sober at the same time she did. I don't know if he actually had a drinking problem or if he didn't, or if he just decided to get sober to help support her in her sobriety. I have heard rumors that Eric is not sober and he's been partying a lot, and that Jessica's trying to stay sober and he's actively not. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's not, but I will say if one person tries to get sober in a relationship and the other person is not also committed to sobriety or a sober lifestyle, it's gonna be really difficult. And yes, I understand that when somebody's getting sober, it's their responsibility. It's not other people's responsibility to contribute to your sobriety. Like you have to do it. Like you have to get to a point where you're able to be around someone when they're drinking and not drink as well. Like if we're talking about alcoholism or something, like yes, your sobriety is your responsibility. You can't stop everybody else from drinking to get you to stop drinking. You have to find that within yourself. But if you are in a relationship with somebody who is actively drinking while you're trying to get sober, it's gonna be really tricky because it's gonna be around you all the time. It's gonna be a big part of your life. Like I could see where navigating that would be difficult. Again, I don't know if that's specifically what's going on with them, but I can say in that type of a situation, it's gonna be a serious challenge, and that's gonna be a real struggle for like any couple if that's the dynamic you're dealing with. If you do have somebody going through sobriety and you have somebody else who's not committed to also supporting that sobriety, the relationship is likely going to be strained because of that. So another thing is that Jessica has been seen more recently looking terrifyingly skinny, and I seriously hope her health is not being compromised. But like I said before, it's probably pretty likely that she's doing some pretty dangerous things to get herself that skinny, and she's proven, at least in her book, the way she's talked about her body and her body image, she's willing to do some pretty dangerous things in the name of being skinny. To me, that's a sign that things are not well with her. She's apparently hinted at working on music again. Supposedly she has gone to Nashville, from what I hear. That's why her and Eric ended up separated and stuff. She went off to Nashville to work on her music. Again, this is rumors and speculation, but I do find it interesting when I heard that I was like, wait a second. So Eric couldn't go to Wharton in Pennsylvania because Jessica wanted him in California so they could start a family together. Now Jessica's going to Nashville to work on her music and leaving Eric in California with the kids, is the rumor I'm hearing. But I could definitely see where that could end up being a strain on their relationship, because that seems a bit hypocritical. I mean, again, the speculation, that's a red flag right there. Like that's a big issue. And a sign, again, that she's clearly prioritizing like her passion and purpose over his, and she's really like talked him out of him actually following what his passion and purpose was. I would also note though, and I didn't get into Jessica's relationship with her dad, which, you know, Jessica had her dad as her manager. It's always been kind of a complicated relationship. Jessica took her parents' split because, you know, they split when she was an adult. She took it very personal. She ended up firing her dad as her manager. Her dad got prostate cancer, she talked about in the book. And, you know, a lot of her complicated feelings towards, you know, having her father as her manager. Her father was quite controlling of her because he was managing her career. I tried looking it up to see kind of like what the situation was with her father now, and apparently her father does have cancer again. Jessica deciding she wants to get back into music is not that shocking if you think about it from the perspective of music was something she kind of shared with her dad when he was managing her, and I don't know if he still is managing her or what that scenario is, but I could see while Jessica is going through a lot of complicated feelings about sobriety, her marriage, being a mother, being a celebrity, you know, dealing with the potential loss of her father and things like that, like, you know, which I wish the best for him. It would make a certain amount of sense that Jessica would want to go back to something that was a comfort zone for her, which would be music. So I don't think it's that shocking that she wants to return to music considering what's going on. And again, I hope the best for her. I hope she comes out with a great album, and I hope everything goes well, and I wish the best for, you know, her family and everything. But that kind of life change and dealing with that while she's trying to stay sober, I hope she is staying sober. She's obviously doing some pretty drastic things to get her to this weight loss that she's dealing with. So she's probably preparing herself to be more in the public eye. Obviously had a lot of plastic surgery, which, like I said, is essentially like self-harm. I mean, it's body mutilation is really what it is. She was always so gorgeous, and for her to feel like she had to do so much to her body just to fit a beauty standard is just so heartbreaking. And dealing with all that she's dealing with, it's not shocking to me that her marriage would be strained. It's really not. Jessica really does give off, and again, I say this with so much love, she gives off a serious pick-me energy in a very wounded feminine way of like I don't think it's necessarily the desperate need for male validation, but it's this desperate need to have a man in her life because she's outsourcing her safety. Like if a man is in her life, she'll feel safe. Like he'll protect her. But she's not doing a great job of picking men who truly will protect her. And she's also, particularly with Eric, there's so many signs in this book when she talks about meeting him that she was so desperate and so needy and clingy and to the point of controlling, of, you know, trying to make him into the perfect man because like she was ready for that perfect man. And again, they were married for 10 years, and I don't know a ton about their relationship in those 10 years because they weren't as public about their marriage. This book really only goes up to when she had her third child. We don't really get a ton of insight into her marriage. She obviously kept it more private, probably because she learned from previous relationships that were more public, and like more power to her for deciding to keep it private. Like, I respect that. So we don't really know how the marriage transitioned in 10 years. A lot of things can happen in 10 years, but I just wanted to point this out because there are a lot of red flags in their initial meeting and in early on in their relationship that their split was not as shocking to me. And I don't want to pile on to like the media scrutiny of Jessica Simpson because she's already gotten plenty, but I do think that there's so many things that Jessica did and Jessica's done, you know, even as this big celebrity, that is so common with women. And I really want to point these things out because I think women can learn from this. Never chase a man. I say this to women all the time, and I've had women argue with me about this. This might be one of the most controversial things that I say, which is crazy. Never chase a man. Don't make the first move. Don't latch on to him. Let him show you who he is. Let him show you that he's gonna show up. Let him show you how much time he wants to spend with you, how much he's willing to pursue you. Don't go after him and try to control him and change him. Let him show up and show you who he is. Don't cling to him. Don't chase after him. Don't latch onto him. Don't make the first move. I honestly would not even suggest even acting like you're interested in a guy in the beginning. I know that's a little bit more of a gray area, but I know from my own experience, anytime I have ever made things easy for a guy, I have always ended up regretting it. If you as a woman make the first move, I don't care how long you've been married to the guy. I don't care. You can tell me you've been with him for 20 years and have 3 kids. I don't care. You were not his choice. If he wants you bad enough, he will go after you. If you go after him, he might stay with you, he might date you, he might marry you, he might take advantage of you, he might get whatever he wants from you or whatever he can get from you, but you will never be the woman he really wants. And if the woman he really wants comes along and he gets the opportunity with her, he will always go after her. Never make things easy for a man. Never chase him. Never go after him. Never cling to him. It's a recipe for disaster. And I say this because, again, it's exactly what Jessica did, and we're talking 3 kids and 10 years later, they're splitting. I'm never wrong about this. I'm never wrong about this. If you're out there saying, I'm the exception, I chased my man, I went after him, I made the first move, and we're still married, wait. I wish the best for you. I don't wish anybody's marriage or anybody's relationship to fall apart. I don't. But I guarantee you, if he ever got an opportunity with the woman he really wants, he would take it. He took you because you made things easy for him, and he does not appreciate you. If you make the first move and you make it easy for a man, he will never truly appreciate you. Ever. He will never truly appreciate you and see you as the prize, because the prize does not chase. You're what he has to work to achieve. You are what he has to win, because you're the prize. Show up as the prize. If you chase him, you're telling him that he's the prize, and he will never appreciate you. This does not mean that anytime that a guy goes after you or chases you or makes a move or anything that he's automatically a good guy. You still have to use discernment, and you still have to decide whether or not you think that this guy is really what you want and stuff. There are a lot of creeps out there that are just going to chase after women or will go after any woman or something. So a man going after you is not a guarantee that he's a good guy or the right guy for you. But if you're having to chase him, he's not worth it. No man is worth that. No man is worth chasing after, because even if you get that man, I don't care if he's like the greatest man in the world, he's a high value man or whatever. If you chase a man and you catch him, get into a relationship with him, maybe you marry him, maybe you have kids, maybe you have all those things, he will never truly appreciate you. And as a woman, being in a relationship with a man who thinks he's the prize and does not appreciate you is a lifetime sentence of torture. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. So please, ladies, please stop making moves on men. Please stop chasing men. Don't do it, because he will never truly appreciate you. And honestly, I think in Jessica's case, I think she went after a guy who wasn't really fully ready to show up for commitment, and possibly because I think she was a little bit hesitant about commitment too. She latched onto it because that was her comfort zone, and she latched onto it because she wanted a relationship, but I don't think she fully wanted to show up in a commitment. The fact that she was so hesitant about marriage, which is understandable, is kind of a sign of that. So again, these were just my thoughts on, you know, the Jessica Simpson, Eric Johnson divorce. There's a lot of speculation, and again, I'm not trying to just pile on to them. This was not about like just trashing Jessica or anything like that. I think there's a lot of lessons here, and there were a lot of red flags that I picked up on reading her book. And I just think that these are lessons that women can learn from, because I want to see women not make these mistakes so we can have happier, healthier lives and relationships. Jessica gives off a lot of pick me energy. So if you feel like you identified with Jessica or have done some of the things that Jessica's doing, you've chased after men, or you've gotten yourself in some of these situations where you've gotten yourself into relationships with men who are mistreating you or trying to control you, I highly recommend you check out my Recovering Pick Me Girl guided journal. There's so much information in there. Even if you don't like necessarily think of yourselves as like a super obvious pick me girl, this is just for any woman who is just really seeking male validation and you really want to heal from that. You really want to find yourself and connect within yourself and really find your inner confidence, so that whether or not you choose to be in a relationship, because it's not about rejecting men, it's not about not being in a relationship, it's about healing the parts of you that are feeling desperate and needy for a relationship, so that you can show up as a healthier version of yourself, so that if you do find a man and you do decide to get into a relationship, you'll just be in a healthier space and you can have a healthier relationship. Also, if you're finding you're getting yourself into a little bit of a doormat mode, or you're finding yourself, you know, kind of being a punching bag or a pushover or things like that, my Dark Feminine Energy guided journal is also amazing. That and my Recovering Pick Me Girl guided journal are honestly, like, I have done so many expensive, like pricey healing courses and stuff. I've learned some from some have been a complete waste of money. I've done so much. So honestly, these guided journals there's so much healing work kind of all compiled into a nice little compact book or 2 books that it can help you so much. So I really encourage you to check out these guided journals. I've been getting really great feedback from people that have purchased them. There's some great reviews on Amazon of these books, and I've been hearing a lot of people reach out and say that these books have been really life-changing, so I really appreciate that. I've also had some people that have reached out to me, especially with the whole TikTok drama, expressing that my content has really helped them, and you don't know how much that means to me. Like, I appreciate that so much. And honestly, like, you know, any like engagement, subscribing to this channel, liking the content, you know, leaving comments and things like that, like any engagement really does boost this video in the algorithm to just help other people see this message, so we can just all learn these lessons and we can all just have happier, healthier lives and relationships, which is really what I want ultimately. I do have some things planned. I am looking into starting a Patreon so I can make some content that isn't specifically like searchable on the social media algorithms and stuff, so I can make a little bit more personalized content. I am looking into that. I'm working on getting a Patreon going. So if you are interested in maybe joining a Patreon so I can give a little bit more customized advice or things that may not necessarily be like, you know, trending on YouTube and stuff. You know, if you have anything that you want to see on there and stuff, like, you know, while I'm kind of setting it up and getting it together, let me know, leave a comment below, or if you want to request anything privately, like a DM on Instagram is probably the best way to do it. As far as I know, TikTok is still around. It was only gone for a short time. I really mostly just use TikTok to like promote my videos here on YouTube, but you know, I encourage you to check me out there too. So the details for my guided journals, courses, masterclasses, and all my social media links are in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.